Interview.
Hello, hello.
Okay.
How are you doing
See
today?
everybody, I can't hear everybody. Hold on.
Okay, we hear you, Bill. Ekaterina, I hear you. Do you hear
Can
me?
you hear me? Okay, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you and Bill.
Yeah. Mr. Brown, are you there?
Can you hear me? I cannot hear you.
Hear
Yes,
you.
we can hear you.
Can't hear.
Okay.
Say something. Oh, you
We are saying something.
Let me check my settings.
Okay. Anyway, while we're waiting for Bill, Ekaterina, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Do we record the video as well because it looks dark to me? Is it okay if it's dark?
What's that?
My video is dark. Is it okay? Are we recording video or only audio?
Just audio.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, doesn't
That's
matter.
good. Yeah. It's okay. It's a sunny day and we had 3 air alerts only, which is not that many these days. So it's kind of quiet day in Dnipro.
Yeah.
And it's not a siren now as well, so we are kind of safe.
So you're in Dnipro.
Yeah, I'm in Dnipro. Yeah, that's it.
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello. Привіт, Катерина.
Привіт.
Як справи?
Добре, дякую, як твої.
Добре, дякую. Так собі, так собі.
Чому так собі? Ні.
Так собі нормально. So sorry. I was saying that I asked her how she was. She said okay. I said I'm okay, but you know, so. She objected, and I said, yeah, so is normal.
So is not good. Це не добре. It's normal
It's
for Ukrainians. It's not normal for you.
Yeah,
it's the refuge. It's the war. It's the war.
How do you
Yeah.
feel 67 days after war is,
Whoa. Yeah.
Good is probably not the right answer. Not the correct answer.
It depends on the scale, you know. Now we are good when nobody is
True,
harmed,
yeah.
when we are alive, when we can walk freely, and nothing is bombing you. If the
Right.
bomb is not falling on your head, you are
Life is
perfect,
good.
you know. It's not just good, it's a perfect day. But it depends on the scale, you know. And if you're on top of this, if you have a house in, if you have a clothes in, that's, I mean, what else do you want to wish? Or enough food, for example, that's perfect. It's more than good.
It's true. We are in our homes. Our homes are not on top of us.
Yeah.
So Ekaterina, you are in Bill Brown's Ukrainian hometown, is that right?
It depends because Bill actually decided to move to Kyiv, and I think it was the wrong decision. He was in the perfect place in the middle of Ukraine, and then he decided to change it to for capital. I mean, he was in the perfect place, but yeah, it was the first.
It's true. Dnipro is very nice, and I miss it a lot. But I have to say, Kyiv is very exciting, and you know, I love the historic buildings there are just beautiful, just outstanding. Dnipro has some very good examples, but the history and all in Kyiv is very interesting, very interesting. But I hope when I go visit you in Dnipro as soon as we win.
Yeah, after we win, yeah, after the victory,
Yeah. After the victory.
And just for Americans and including myself, a little geography. So Dnipro is on the Dnipro River, correct?
Exactly, yes. It's right in the middle of Ukraine on 2 banks of the Dnipro River, on the both banks.
So this is in American terms, this is the smaller Mississippi of Ukraine.
The Dnipro, yes, the Dnipro kind of goes through the middle, but it curves to the east. And on the part that curves the most to the east, that's where you find Dnipro.
Mhm.
And then
And the-
after Dnipro, if you go another 50 miles, maybe, there is Zaporizhia.
Yeah.
And then a little further down, you come to Mykolaiv, another 100 miles. You come to Mykolaiv, which is, in the battle zone. They're fighting over that now. And then a little further, you get to maybe about 25, 30 miles, you get to Kherson, which is right on the Black Sea.
Maybe a little bit more.
Maybe a little bit more. Okay. And that, of course, is in Russian hands.
Mm.
So she's not far from where things are happening. And-
Actually, yeah. So you're talking about this kind of southern battles, but I need to remind that it's 200 kilometers to Donetsk, which was
Right.
occupied 8 years ago. So
Yeah,
it's kilometers, and it's I don't know how many miles it is. I'm not good in these transactions, but
how many kilometers? How many kilometers?
200.
Yeah, that's about 100 miles.
So about 100 miles from Donetsk, and Donetsk is occupied and it's fortified. So the problem with Donetsk is that it's actually heavily fortified because all these places they have occupied since February, they are not well fortified. They try to fortify them, but it will take forever, probably several more months to make anything good out of these fortifications. But they had 8 years to fortify this eastern part. And the problem is that if you look at the map, at the normal map of Ukraine, I'm in the middle, Dnipro is in the middle. But if you look at this occupied zone, if you look at the areas which have been under this occupation for these 8 years, I'm now in actually eastern Ukraine. So it depends how you would look at this map. So I'm literally very, very close to Russia. Not that close as Kharkiv is and always has been. That's why Kharkiv in much worse situation because they just can bomb it from Belgorod, not even moving to the territory of Ukraine. But here it's a little bit better. It's a little bit farther from Donetsk. But again, they put these weapons in Donetsk and they can easily throw these shorter distance weapons here, shorter distance bombs.
Mhm.
So you've got enemies to the east and you've got enemies to the south, and they're moving in your direction.
Yeah. So, and they
Trying
both
to.
try to invade. So they try to invade, and also they try to get from the west, from Kryvyi Rih, which is Kryvyi Rih is in the west. So the battle for Kryvyi Rih, it has started again 2 months ago, and it is ongoing all the time. So it's every day they try to invade from the side of Kryvyi Rih, and Kryvyi Rih is fighting fiercely, despite it was considered before this war escalation. Within all these 8 years, Kryvyi Rih was considered as the most pro-Russian region in my oblast. Oblast is kind of state if you compare to the United States. So oblast is a state in Ukraine, and here it was considered as the most pro-Russian city in the whole region. And now they're fighting against Russians, and they're not letting them from the west. So now we have these 3 axes. They try to put us in the pocket from the west, east, and south.
Right.
Yeah,
So you're saying, I think Americans won't have heard of this. This is a city called Kryvyi Rih.
Kryvyi Rih.
Kryvyi Rih.
Yeah, I see it. I see it on the map. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not on the river, but it is a significant. It's fairly close to Dnipro.
Yeah, so this is it has a good road because Kryvyi Rih they have mines there, and the mines are on Donbass. So Dnipro is in the middle. We have these big factories, big plants, industry here, and they bring the raw materials both from Kryvyi Rih and from Donetsk. They used to bring it before the war, and that means that they have a very good road with Kryvyi Rih. So it's if they take it, it is literally it's not that near, it's far, but they will have a good road, like a good road to go. That's the problem. Yeah.
So how are you feeling there in Dnipro? Like, are you feeling like the enemy is coming, or do you feel like the enemy is being held back?
It depends. It is changing a lot during these 2 months because the feeling that enemy is coming has been here for 8 years. I know that you lived in Kyiv, and in Kyiv, I'm pretty sure that you haven't felt the war for a single day. because I've been in Kiev for many, like even in 2014, I visited Kiev quite often back then, and I've been there in 2014, in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, and I didn't feel that people in Kiev think that the war is ongoing, that they have war in their country. And in Dnipro, we felt war all this time. So I wouldn't say that we didn't think that there is, it wasn't peaceful. Let's say these 8 years, Dnipro hasn't been peaceful. We have now the best hospital, military hospital, I think not only in Ukraine, but in Europe, because our doctors, they treated all these heavy military wounds, and now they know how to do it because they practiced for 8 years. And now, like in February, I told you, because we were talking with Bill, and I told Bill that actually I feel grief, because they literally started to invade, and I realized how many people would die, and we realized that this conflict is growing. It's just a new scale of the same war. And a lot of people panicked, and that's why you see that many people who flee to Europe, who flee to Western Ukraine, and people flee in evacuation trains. And evacuation train is a train where you need to stay for 24 hours. Usually the travel to the Western Ukraine, it takes, I think, 16 hours, but because you need to stop if the bombing is coming, so they had to stop in different small stations because of this constant bombings. That's why this travel, it's not 16 hours anymore, it's 24 hours, and many people stayed with children, and children including like 12 years old children. They were just standing, and they didn't have a place to lay down, to sleep or something for 24 hours. And people were in panic, maybe for the first weeks of March, first 2 or maybe even 3 weeks of March. It was literally what to do. Would they invade fast? And probably you know that the occupants army, it's considered as the second largest and second best army in the world. And when you face the full-scale invasion, and they said it's 160,000 people who came, and they're saying that it's the second best army in the world, and you think, do we have a chance to stand actually? What are the chances you're trying to calculate it? And in the very beginning, the idea was that they will invade us. We also thought that they would invade us very fast, and that the resistance will be within the city. So the whole idea of this war, it was a partisan war, and we were literally waiting that they would invade Dnipro for the first days. And so you see this panic, but also what I saw from here, it's Molotov cocktails, which were cooked like literally in every yard. And I'm not kidding, I haven't seen that many Molotov cocktails in my life. And when you see that they're doing it on the streets and all this in every place possible, and homeless people who make living from collecting bottles, they donated bottles they collected, like homeless people donated bottles for Molotov's cocktail. So what we waited for this first weeks, we were waiting for this invasion. We were waiting Russians to invade, and Russia is Russian fascists. That's the new term which appeared after this February 24th. And we were thinking that they will invade, and we will need to kill them here. We will need to defend us here. But now, after 2 months, it is more belief in our forces, in our army. We have more belief, and actually, it's very strange because it looks like they gave us time to prepare, because they were not like, I don't know what they were doing there, but now we feel more prepared, we feel more international help, and we feel that at least something, maybe it's not enough, but at least something in terms of ammunition is coming. And we have as for protective ammunition, as for this bulletproof vests, helmets, we didn't have enough in the beginning of the war, but after 2 months, now every soldier has this bulletproof vest, which wasn't the case in the beginning. So now what we don't really have, we don't have this ammunition in order to start to fight the territories back. We cannot fight back, we only can defend ourselves. That's the problem. We cannot liberate the occupied lands. And after 2 months, after this first panic, because literally first weeks, it was, what do you need to do? Do you need to flee or do you need to fight? And if you would stay and fight, what should you do? Because, for example, you can see I'm not physically fit, and I cannot even run for short distance, not even for long distance. And throwing the Molotov, like my mom, she is 69 years old, and she was like, okay, I can throw the Molotov cocktails in this transported vehicle. Like my my mom, and she was serious about it. And she told me that she had a dream that she captured some invader, some Russians and Russia's diversant, and she was handling this guy.
How old is your mother?
69. She's 69.
69. I mean, she's ready to throw the Molotov cocktails, though.
Yeah, that was the plan, you know.
And I'll just make the point our listeners can't see you. You look rather fit to me. I don't know what your running speed is.
Yeah, no, I can't run. I'm not fit. I have the problems in my knees, and actually I'm not that fit. It's like I look better than I feel. But yeah, but that's even people, like even women, even old people, they wanted to fight, like starting from the very beginning. And those who flee, and probably if you've been to Europe, you saw that those who flee, they were mostly women with children. I know single women who also flee, but mostly it was because they had to protect their children. And if not the child, maybe, I'm not saying that it's the truth for everybody, but some of the women, they were saying if not their children, they would stay and fight. And that's the idea. So they were saving the kids, actually. And that was the mood. It was a panic, but it was a panic. Okay, how can I resist? It was like panicking, saving children and resisting at the same time. Now we are not panicking, we are more prepared. But again, it's we are not sure what Russians will do, because now the biggest threat, of course, is the nuclear weapons. And if they literally, if they blow up, they're holding nuclear plant here in the Zaporizhia region, and it's very close to Zaporizhia. When we were talking about all these places geographically, they have this nuclear plant, and when you say that okay, probably we need, they might throw the nuclear weapon or the small weapon, small nuclear rocket, but they can simply put in the air our nuclear plant. They're already holding. They can just blow it up in the air, and it will be the same. They don't need even to do anything with the rockets, because they're holding it. So
is this the plant at Zaporizhia, or is it a different plant?
Yeah, it is Zaporizhia. It's called Zaporizhia plant, but the city, it's near Zaporizhia, and the city itself is called Energodar, energy-giving city. So this is this city of Energodar. They're holding it, and they invaded it, they obviously holded this nuclear plant, and it is very strange because there were no fights for it, and probably our army didn't want to fight for it, because if they started the fights, there was literally Russians. They don't know where to stop, and there were literally bomb explosions near the nuclear plant. They were there. They were shooting at the territory of the nuclear plant, and it's a fact. It's something that I'm not making up. It's the fact they even videotaped. And because of that, so Ukrainian army just literally gave them Energodar city with this nuclear plant, because we didn't want them to explode it like accidentally, but they might do it intentionally. And we don't know if they would.
They seem very undisciplined, but then sometimes I think the lack of discipline is part of the design. You're correct that they don't appear to know what they're doing, but that becomes a danger itself.
Yeah, that's but it can also be a plan. So if they already used chemical weapons, they're using phosphorus bombs, they're using cassette bombs, which are forbidden, and they are sending it on these residential buildings. They're not sending it to some kind of military facilities, and we don't know what. So we know that they have nuclear weapons, and if they're already using chemical weapons, why wouldn't they use nuclear weapons? That's the threat. They have them. So because it looks like, and a lot of experts are saying it, that they cannot at least move fast on Earth, because their forces are more or less equal here. But what they can do, they can bomb us. That's bad.
From what I understand, Dnipro, obviously, the airport has been destroyed. Russia has been shelling Dnipro. You were mentioning, it's a calm morning, no explosions, but you haven't seen any invading forces in Dnipro.
No, of course not. It's Dnipro is the key, also the key. Actually, yeah, if we are saying about Kyiv as the capital of the country, so Dnipro is the business capital of the country, and it's Dnipro. I don't look like a millionaire, but the Dnipro is actually the city of millionaires. We have the biggest concentration of rich people here in Dnipro, not in Kyiv. So all like big oligarchs, big banks, big business is actually located here. So, and maybe you heard about this Yuzhmash, which is the South Machinery Plant, which is basically the plant which makes these rockets come into space. We have the biggest space program here, and this space program is something that Russians need, because during the Soviet times there was the triangle, Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Baikonur. And this Dnipro and Kharkiv, we produced rockets, and in Baikonur there was this launching platform where they launched them. And now Dnipro is working with America actually on it, and maybe you heard about CSTART, and CSTART is the joint Ukrainian or American-Ukrainian or Ukrainian-American program, where like our parts of the rockets we're launching them into space. And so we still have these facilities, we still have people who can construct these rockets, space rockets, and invading Dnipro and capturing Dnipro, it will help a lot for Russian economy. That's true. So they want us, and we know that they want us. That's why we try to fortify Dnipro as much as possible. So we try our best, and they tried to invade us in 2014 as well. It's not something new, and we know that we are targeted, and we are a very wanted city for them.
The speculation is speculation, but there's been tremendous speculation about the next week going toward Victory Day. And, I suppose now that I've met you, I have another person to be worried about. There's been some speculation that this next week could be pretty tough. Who knows if that's true or not?
There is a very big difference between what Russians want and what they can do. It's a very big difference. And when people say, like when I was reading everything, literally up to this month, when I read any articles online, I can only read Russians want to invade this, Russians want this, Russians want that, and nobody actually is writing what Ukrainians want, what Ukraine is doing, so we are like considered to be the passive spectators and who are just treating Russia, who are just into what Russian will do, and that's not always the case. If they want to do it. First of all, they want to invade the whole Ukraine. They want to do it by the 9th of May. But I think there is not a single person who thinks that they can do it realistically by the 9th of May. And I think they wouldn't be able to do it ever. That's my idea. And that's why they are coming to the second question, what they want to do now. But what we want to do now to the Victory Day, we also share this victory. And if we are talking about the Second World War, Ukraine was occupied, and Ukraine was occupied by Soviets, then by Nazis, then by Soviets again. So Ukraine went to 3 times to the occupation, and because the Soviets time, we now consider as the occupation. We didn't voluntarily join the Soviet Union. They had to spend many bloody years here to join Ukraine, to unite it with this Bolshevik Russia, and it was real battles. So again, Ukraine was under occupation. Ukraine contributed a lot in the victory, and my grandfather also served in the Soviet army, and he also contributed to the victory. And for myself, as for Ukrainian whose relatives are also participated in this victory, I also want Russians to be defeated by the 9th of May. That's the same feeling and the same passion. And I also think that if we have enough of ammunition, if Europe and America, if the world join with joint efforts will provide us with enough ammunition, maybe by the 9th of May, we will be able to bring Kherson back to Ukraine, because Kherson is the only big city that is occupied by Russians, and it was occupied, they kind of surrendered. That's also the truth, because Russia told we are not going to enter your city, we will just go around, and they went around, and obviously they occupied it. So Kherson now is the only big regional center, which was occupied. And maybe if we would if we speculate about the next week and the Victory Day, Ukraine also celebrates Victory Day. And I, for example, as the Ukrainian, also want to see that Kherson is ours. And I want to see evacuation of Mariupol, for example, again, with the joint efforts, with the joint world efforts by the 9th of May. I think it's realistic within 10 days to not deoccupy. Okay, we need to evacuate people. We can evacuate people to Turkey. It's not something new, so we can evacuate them through the sea to the third country. Turkey offered it, actually. The United Nations offered different plan of evacuation. We can evacuate people by land here in Ukraine, but we need to evacuate Azovstal. And again, this is the 9th of May. It's a significant day for us, so why wouldn't we do it by this day? Actually, we need to do it now. We needed to do it yesterday, but if not yesterday, let's do it today. So the speculations, what would happen next week and what the Russians want for happening next week, we shouldn't concentrate that much on this idea that they have a big army, they have nuclear weapons, and they occupy the whole Eurasia. So that's true, but I think that the mistake is that the world, including the world leaders, they are afraid of Russians, and that's a mistake, because I think in Ukraine here we proved that there is nothing to be afraid of. And we need to, again, to join the efforts, and with joint efforts, we can not only push them back, but we also can explain them that it's not okay to invade independent countries, because Ukraine is not the only independent country which they're going to invade. They're going to go to Moldova, they're going to go to Poland, they're going to go to Baltic states, and that's only the states that they say they want to come. And there are many other states that they don't say, but maybe they keep it in mind. So we need to explain these people that they shouldn't invade the new territories, and doing it by the 9th of May, actually, it will be a very significant, because they will be put on their place. They wait for this exact day, and this is exact day where they should be defeated, and they should be explained that it's not okay to behave like this. So that's my speculation.
Well, I mean, that's such an important reminder that from the very beginning, many people in the world have underestimated Ukraine, and it would be a mistake to, we should learn by now that Ukraine is much better equipped and much better at fighting than anybody ever imagined. I wanted to ask about, since you brought up World War II, I understand that Dnipro has a significant Jewish population, and you mentioned Kryvyi Rih.
Yeah.
And I understand that that's where your president is originally from, so in the region. So I don't know, I know that during World War II, the Ukrainian Jewish population really was targeted, and there were significant losses. So I don't know if you can discuss it all, kind of with this whole Nazi propaganda coming out of Russia. There's a strong Jewish history in Ukraine and also in Dnipro, as I understand it.
Yes, of course. As for the Jewish population, it comes back. Why it's very interesting why they appeared here, because historically, Russian Empire, when it was even Catherine the Great in the enrollment, they made the line of settlement of Jewish. It was the southern line, and if you're not a rich Jewish, you were not able to move to the north of Empire, and you were not able to move, for example, to Moscow, to St. Petersburg. So Jewish population within Russian Empire, they settled mostly in Ukraine, and that's why Odessa is a Jewish city. Uman, which Russia has bombed multiple times. It's the Jewish city. It was the Jewish city. Now there are less Jewish there because many immigrated to Israel, but still there are many Jewish people. And in Uman, every year, Jewish come to commemorate to Rosh Hashanah, to the New Year, to commemorate the prophet who was buried there, and they cannot bring them back because, according to the religion, if the person was buried in some place, they cannot relocate this person. That's why they come here to Ukraine, and also that's how in Dnipro this big Jewish population has appeared. And you're talking about the Nazis and the targeted of Jews during the Second World War. But I want to tell you that when Soviets came, it wasn't much better. They were not killed. Jewish population wasn't killed. But in Soviet Union, you couldn't stand and say, I'm a Jewish person. So despite in our city, now we have the biggest Jewish center in the world. And we have this huge menorah buildings, and we have the Holocaust Museum. We have Jewish people in charge of multiple questions. So it's kind of mixed city, but and it was like this. It's not some newcomers, but before the independence of Ukraine, these Jewish people, they didn't even have the synagogue. So the synagogue appeared here in early 90s. And they now they can say they are Jewish, they can wear their national clothes, they can follow their religious traditions, but during the Soviet days, they even had to change their surnames. So it wasn't popular to say, it wasn't even not popular. If you say you're Jewish, you wouldn't get the good position at any place. And with the independence of Ukraine, because of Ukrainian self-identity, Ukraine was always the land with mixed population, especially here in my region, because it wasn't settled again historically, and it was a territory of Cossacks. And in order to settle down those territories, to make this kind of population, the empire back then, it welcomed immigrants. So we had German population, we had the Greek population, we had Jewish population, we had Ukrainian population, we had Russian population. And that's why mentally we are prepared for this diversity. And when the independence was achieved finally, was gained by Ukraine, Jewish people slowly started to go back to their traditions in our city. And they started, again, some were changing their surnames, some were not changing their surnames. They started to have stronger connections with Israel. They started to build their synagogues. And it's very interesting that last year, our representative of Jewish community, he lives in Kiev, and regretfully, I don't remember his name, I just forgot his name, but he said he's the head of Jewish Congress in Ukraine, and he said that several years, 5 years ago, he said in this International Jewish Congress that Ukraine doesn't have Semitism, that Ukraine is like the country where we shouldn't fight Semitism, and he said that people didn't believe him. They said that's not true, that's impossible. And then they started to investigate, and what they found out that really in Ukraine, even comparing to Europe, this scale, this level of everyday anti-Semitism is very low. It's not significant. There are like some examples when the monuments were destroyed, but it was radicals, and it's not the everyday level. But Jewish in Ukraine, Jewish population, they have equal rights with us, with anyone else. And you can look at our president, we can look at our top leaders of the country, and among them they were married Jewish. It's impossible, for example, if we compare Ukraine to Russia, in Russia, it's impossible to take a position unless you're ethnical Russian. It's not even like you cannot, they have, I read yesterday about Buryat soldiers because I was wondering why so many are dying here, who they are. And Buryatia is a part of Russia. And I was amazed that in Buryatia, the leaders of their region actually are Russians. So the country of Buryatia, populated by Buryats who are dying in Ukraine, it's actually governed by ethnical Russians. They don't let the other nations, not even Jewish, they don't let any other nations in charge. But in Ukraine, Jewish people, they can, they're equal as anyone else. And it is actually the same to Russian origin people. I personally know the woman who is a Russian passport holder because she didn't change it. She had it, she just had it, and she lived in Donbass, but for these 8 years she is volunteering on Ukrainian side. She is providing the help, and she is literally fighting for Ukraine. And we didn't have that much that level of discrimination, and that's why saying that Ukraine is Nazi, having Jewish president, really, I mean, that's something ridiculous. It's very hard even to to put inside. So what are the signs of Nazis then? So putting the Jewish as a president, is it a Nazi behavior? Treating everybody equally, is it a Nazi behavior? Talking about women rights, and actually women, we have 20% of women in Ukrainian army. only Israel has more, and it's more than in America actually, treating women equally with men. Is it Nazi something? So what are the signs of Nazi which we can find in Ukraine? That's tell me what Nazi do we have here? So I don't see anything Nazi.
Also, there's equal opportunity for oligarchs, because the center she's talking about, the Menorah Center, which is this big complex, which is sort of vaguely in the shape of a menorah, was built by Kolomensky, the oligarch, who has very shady beginnings in his career, and is a bit of a gangster, I would say. I think it's pretty fair that you could say that. And but very colorful person, but controversial. He was governor of the oblast for a while, and was actually threw a lot of his personal fortune into funding the local militia that went and responded to the attack in 2014. One of the militias that saved Ukraine, that basically volunteer groups that just, wearing sneakers ran to the front lines and fought back the Russians and held them. He funded one of these. So I have been to the Menorah Center. It's a nice business place. I had a lot of clients there when I was teaching. But you go by the synagogue, and there were guys out front with Kalashnikovs standing guard.
So that's true, yeah. So Menorah was built not only by him; it was a joint effort of different oligarchs.
It was a bunch. It was a bunch of them. Yeah.
But that's the founding, and he became the governor of the oblast in 2014 when he founded this. So he founded the militia, literally these volunteers, and he was the governor because he had to defend the oblast. And that's exactly.
But then he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, stealing billions from Privatbank, which he owned. And this was actually one of the big victories of Ukrainian anti-corruption. They stopped him, and they took Privatbank away from him, which he's been fuming about ever since. And when I was in Dnipro, he had funded, basically he hired a bunch of factory workers from Nikopol to come to, which he owned the factory, to come to Ukraine, to come to Dnipro and stand there and make obnoxious noise out in front of all the Privatbank branches as a way of annoying the hell out of Privatbank. And he did this all over Ukraine. I mean, he's got a lot of money to throw around, and uses unconventional techniques, shall we say.
Yeah, that's how it's sometimes working in corrupted places.
Yeah. But it's a bit of a success story there. They did take it away from him, and he hasn't been able to get it back.
That's true. But he took money back. Like he stole the money, literally. Because of the scheme, they took the bank, but they didn't take the money. That's important to note. They
didn't get the money. Limited success.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about, you had mentioned, that you've been at war since 2014. And there have been these occupied cities and occupied territories. Is it your perception that that many people who were more favorable toward Russia have changed their minds because of the invasion? Do you understand what I'm asking?
That means it's full-scale invasion or 2014 invasion?
No, the full-scale invasion. In other words, there are, people who might have been inclined to be favorable to Russia. Has the invasion changed their mind? The full-scale invasion.
Again, we need to look at the map of Ukraine attentively. You will see Ukraine before 2014 with Crimea, with Donbas region, and this was that is the country I'm talking about when I talk about Ukraine. So in my perception, Ukraine is this country. Like if you look at the map of 2013, that's Ukraine I'm talking about when I talk. And
Right.
now
I mean,
the
can I just-
situation is very
Oh,
different.
sorry. Can I just clarify, because you cut out a little bit? So, I mean, you're saying that you reject the idea that Donbas is part of Russia. Is that what I'm hearing?
Of course, obviously, Donbas and Crimea is integral, and like it's Ukraine. It's not the parts of Russia. It's simply Ukraine, and we are talking about Ukraine as a country. And Ukraine is a country only with Donetsk, Lugansk regions, and Crimea, because that's the borders that are recognized by international society. That's the borders that all the countries agreed after the Second World War and after the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's the borders that international community recognized, agreed, and promised to protect. We didn't talk about this when we gave up the nuclear weapons. So let's remember that actually the world told Ukraine, you're giving up your nuclear weapons, and not only nuclear weapons. We also at the same time gave up long distance missiles. We had them, and we brought them to Russia, and now they're sending it back to us, but they're sending the rockets from the sky. We delivered them the weapons that actually is killing us now. They use it as these weapons. So we delivered Russians these weapons because international community promised that our borders will be the borders which we had in 2013. And these borders, they include Donetsk, they include Lugansk, and they include Crimea. And the rhetorics of Russia or Rushists is that they wanted it. It's like a victim. It's when you rape a woman and you say that she wanted it. That's exactly what happened to these occupied regions. It's when you come with arms, when you kill people, as happened in Donbas, when you harass people in Crimea, and you say they wanted it. Look, we have the referendum in Sevastopol, and in Sevastopol, if you remember, 120, I'm not wrong, 120% of the population voted for Russia. So where's this 20% coming from? The population, they didn't have the same as the people who can vote for Russia, 20% more than the original population. Of course, it's impossible, it's faked, and you come in with your weapons, you fake the referendum, you're saying that they wanted it, and you're trying to justify the military aggression. So that's why when I talk about Ukraine, I talk about Ukraine. I'm not talking about the parts of Ukraine Russia thinks that they might to spare. I'm talking about my country, and my country should be united. And but we have some problems with these zones that were under occupation. Why we have these problems? First of all, we have these problems because the population of Crimea, it's a region which was different. It consists not only with Ukrainians and Russians, it's the place of Crimean Tatars. They're called Crimean Tatars because they originated in Crimea. And this is the part of population that is under oppression, under the discrimination, and under constant fear for their life for these 8 years. And now the population of Crimea, it consists hugely with Russians who came to live there. So their government gave them the permission to come to Crimea, and they lived there for these 8 years. So they invaded it and they occupied it literally. And if we are talking about liberating Crimea now, we will talk about the need of doing something with the people, Russian passports holders, who are now thinking that they have right to live there, which they don't. And it happened already before that. They relocated Crimean Tatars in this mid-50s, and then people after the Second World War, in this not even in the beginning of 50s, and what they did, they just occupied their houses and they settled them with Russians. And when we had them back, when we had Crimean Tatars back, they didn't have housing because Russians lived in their houses. And now we have the same situation. We will need to deal with Russian passport holders there, who obviously are pro-Russian and they hate us. So the occupation of Crimea is a huge problem. In Donbas region, the problem is also big, but because they were under occupation for these 8 years, a very few people are left who believe in Russia, actually, because Russians this kind of new Nazis, they never treat this territory as their own. What they did, they stole everything. They even steal the tram route from Lugansk. They liberated Lugansk from trams. They steal it and they for metal. That's it. So they were stealing the resources of these territories, and they were not investing anything. So the industry is almost nothing now. And this is the emptified region, which is mined everywhere. The mines are on the fields. Normal people, they emigrated either to other countries. Some of them went to Russia, but the majority came to Ukraine. So now we have this deserted in terms of population, in terms of industry, and in terms of even trams region, which we will need to integrate somehow. And we have a good percent of the young people who don't know that they're Ukrainians or Russians or whatever. We have them captured. And what Russians do, they force them, they force them to fight against Ukraine. And when we capture them, they're saying, actually, we are Ukrainians. So we are actually, we don't know what we are fighting for. So we will have, I don't know how can we make Donbass a normal region? Again, it's now a depressive desert. It's a very bad region. And also we can talk about Ukraine, the parts of Ukraine which were not under occupation, but Russian speaking parts of Ukraine, for example, which they were counting for. They thought that we will meet Russians with flowers and say, hello guys. And here there was a percent of people who really thought that maybe it's not a bad idea if we will join in some kind of terms, we'll have some kind of new Soviet Union. So these people, they existed before 24th of February. And now it's maybe 1 out of 1,000, out of 10,000, because people who were supporting Russia's this like maybe mentally or somehow hoping for something under bombings, the support disappeared. Even in most, in those people who wanted to be the part of the new Soviet Union, they don't want it anymore.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm interested in your personal experience and in your activities there in Dnipro. You're a language teacher. You teach Ukrainian, and you've been teaching Russian. You teach English as well, right? You've worked in China, then you came back to Dnipro, coincidentally just as COVID started, so you could not return to China, and you've been in Dnipro ever since. So you're very active teaching online, and suddenly the war broke out, and you have become very involved in community efforts. And I wondered if you could tell us about that and some of the more recent activities that you're dealing with displaced people coming from the battle areas. If you could tell us what the situation is like there.
Okay, first of all, I need to tell you, probably even like in our friendly talks, we haven't discussed it, but I went to China actually on the point of a depression, because I was so much depressed and a little bit suicidal because of the war. And at the time, in 2014, I didn't go to the front line to volunteer because my friend's daughter, she was very ill, and I helped there in hospital. I helped to fundraise money for a child. But in 2015 and 2016, I was working with refugees actually back then. So the war hasn't started for me on the 24th of February, and this work with refugees hasn't started for me right now. And we don't call them refugees because they are offended. They say that we came from the territory of Ukraine to other part of the territory of Ukraine. So we are relocators. It's basically it's the same, but they mentally don't want to admit that they had to flee their homes because of the war. It's something mental, but yeah, we call them relocators, and we gave them the documents of relocators, not refugees in Ukraine. And I was working with them for a few years, and at some point I got that depressed. I get into such a level of depression that I wasn't able to stay here anymore. And my idea when I came to China was just to change the environment, change the place. And I was constantly thinking that they can invade invade Dnipro anytime. And I was constantly thinking that my mom is still here, my aunt is still here, my family is here. And what would I do if the war starts when I'm in China? And every day, like literally every day I had the plan. I was having this silly plan, as now I understand that I will be able to fly here and to take my mom and aunt, and we can be able to flee to evacuate Dnipro, which and you can see that I'm in Dnipro. Here we are, 2022, silly me back then. And now when the war has started, I actually, for many people in Dnipro, it was the panic donating, because you can think about panic buying, but in Dnipro there was panic donating because we remembered 2014 very well, and we knew that you need blood, you need the blog posts, it's this special things on the road which will like road control when they check your documents. So people need, you need to feed people on blog posts, and people need to organize and create this blog posts. So people started to, in a rush, build all these blog posts, and other people started to bring them food, and other people started to prepare the bomb shelters, because yeah, it's very silly. We didn't believe that Russians will invade, and we didn't prepare bomb shelters. So we started in a rush prepare bomb shelters, and even in places I even didn't know that there's a bomb shelter in my neighborhood, and we were working on top of it freely for 30 years, and nobody knew that it's there. So people undig it and make a bomb shelter there, and we randomly created bomb shelters even in the places where it's not safe. So now we're closing them, and we are only leaving the ones that are more or less safe. And this basically, this first volunteering things, they were more like panic and trying to do something, trying to be useful, and it was very chaotic the first days. So somebody was doing the bomb shelter, somebody was going to the blog post, women are starting to cook for these people who are digging the trenches and who are on these blog posts. And other women started to make the nets, the covering nets, and you need to make them manually with your hands. You're taking the fish net, then you're taking...
These are camouflage nets.
Yeah, camouflage nets, yeah. So you need old clothing. So you need old clothing of certain colors. You're cutting this old clothing, and you're from the fishing net, you're doing this camouflage. Wow. Yeah, so it's and it was everybody knew what to do because we experienced it in 2014, but in less scale. And it was a huge queues in these blood centers, blood donating centers, and people stand there in cold under rain. It was something very chaotic, but at the same time, it was something very logical, and it was something that was coming from the experience. And also because there were 160,000 of them, like we didn't have the army of 160,000 people in Ukraine. So the population of Russia is like, I think it's 150 million or something, and the population of Ukraine is 40 or 41 million. So we even don't physically have that many people, and we don't physically have that many clothing for army. We don't have that many boots for army. We don't have that many uniform pieces for army. We don't have that many everything for army. And volunteers also at the time, they started to buy all these things, buy from Poland, buy all these touristic shops. They had nothing within 4 days. So everything you can, like if you think about what we bought for this, for our guys who went as volunteers to the front line, and many volunteers actually were turned back because there were not enough weapons too. So many people wanted, and there were huge queues in this recruiting offices, but people were turned around. They say, we don't need your profession because we don't have the weapon to give you. So people wanted to protect ourselves. And those who went there, they needed basically everything you will need for camping, and it was the winter camping. So you need the sleeping bag, you need this yoga rack or this thing you're putting under your sleeping bag, you need socks. They need a lot of socks all the time. You need underwear, you need a lot of underwear. So the first volunteer work, which was in early March, and people actually, so the question, I know that you would ask it, where are you taking money from? A lot of my students sent me donations. They started to ask, do you need any help? And because I'm teaching online, I have some savings, and I have income. I didn't stop teaching, so I was working. Even the day when the war started, I didn't cancel a single class, literally. I didn't cancel a single class because of the war, but was frustrated. If you saw me, I don't know how my students actually looked at me and were like, okay, I need to handle it for 1 hour because I looked terrible. I looked awful. And I was like, but nobody also canceled. So they were like, they tolerated me in my state. They understood it. And they were asking, how can we help you? And I said, I don't need anything. Me and my family, we are well provided. I make money. But if you want to donate to other people who are in need, I will pass your donations. So that's what I told people, and people started to send donations. Some people organized donations in their home countries, and I have a student from Brazil, and Brazil is not that rich country, so they in the enterprise where they worked, they also called for donations, and this donation, he told me afterwards, it was the biggest through the whole history of the enterprise. So that even for the problems in Brazil, people donated less than they donated to Ukraine, to our place, which is amazing. People were, and it was a lot of support because people are sending you money and you're going and you're buying something for soldiers. Like we bought, at one point, we bought 150 this yoga mats, like 150, and they went to the sanitary compartment. So they went to the medics, basically, who also had to sleep somewhere. And it was like on sleeping bags again, you know, they all needed sleeping bags. They bought sleeping bags a lot. And we also like buying the socks and underwear because you cannot wash underwear in these field conditions, and that's a big problem for soldiers. And I was able to buy it, and it was a support. I was thinking, okay, the whole world is supporting me, and the whole world is supporting us here, and we can do this work. And I was very inspired by it. By now, there is the military, they all received their salary, so they are a little bit easier. And obviously, this first month we collected a lot of things for them. So they don't need that much. They need something here and there, but it's very small. But instead, we have a lot of refugees. And some refugees, they came they came from a bomb shelter, and they only had the documents. They even didn't have time to take their money, which were in their apartments. And these people in need, they need everything, literally everything you can imagine. They don't, again, underwear, socks, and the clothing people donate. But as for socks and underwear, you need it new. So you need to buy these things. You need to buy the small things. So providing distributing the clothing, providing this needed new things, providing sanitary kits. For example, females are very unprotected during war. It's the children obviously is the worst protected group, but females are the second group that is and disabled people. So children, disabled, and old people. But then after it comes females, because the small things that like period pads, for example, you don't have them. How would you it's not something you're taking with you when you think how to save your life and how to take your child. And as for children, people firstly think about children. So we have a lot of diapers donated from the international organizations. We have a lot of food for babies, especially for small babies. But this females' needs, they're not covered that well. No, now we have some parts here provided by humanitarian aid, but it wasn't like this back like even 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, it wasn't like this. So we were covering these needs that were not covered by anyone else, and also food kits, because again, even if you can you can go and you can form these documents, but providing documents that you are actually a refugee and receiving at least some governmental or international help, it needs paper. In order to have help, you need to have a paper. But before you have a paper, you also want to eat something. You need to eat something. And covering these needs of people on this ground level, I'm in very ground level. I don't belong to any organization right now. We are a group of activists from my neighborhood who just want to provide help to those who came here to our neighborhood, and who want to provide help to the soldiers, to the boys who went as volunteers at war. So that's what we are doing. We are basically helping to people who came here, and we are helping our people who are now fighting either on the front line or in territorial defense. That is what we are doing. So we are like collecting these needs on this phone regime, manual regime. We're collecting the needs of the people, and some people at some point we had 100, a little bit more than 100 people in school gym who were sleeping on the floor because they didn't have the places to go, and they needed also the underwear, they needed food, they needed like basic things like toothbrushes, toothpastes, all the things, small things you wouldn't imagine that you need them. If you live in your house normally, you just have them. It's like you're having them, they're there. But if somebody evacuates you from the bomb shelter, you don't have anything. So we were providing these things too. That's what we are doing here in this local level.
Wow, that's community organizing, community activism. So,
Bill, how are we doing on time?
I need to go fairly soon, but I'm okay. So, Katerina, how do people find you if they wanted to contact you and make donations? You have maybe through your YouTube channel?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel, and under YouTube videos, I put the link to Patreon. People who want to make a donation, they can either do it via Patreon, or also I have a TransferWise, and also in my diary, which I keep, people can find the details of TransferWise, and the majority of people, they will donate to TransferWise.
Okay, so how do they look you up? How do they find you?
So my probably by my email, and TransferWise is the same as my email. It's minakova.katerina@gmail.com. Maybe it's a little bit too too long, but if you have a description to this episode, I can send it, and maybe you can add it to the description.
If you can, I just sent you a note. If you can type your details in the chat, then I can attach them to the segment.
Yeah, you can contact my email here.
So in your case, and this has been not the case with everybody we've spoken with, you are okay with us using your first and last name, and if I took a screenshot, I could use your photograph. You'd be okay with that, or a picture?
Yeah,
from
you can
your
also
YouTube
link
channel?
my YouTube, and on my YouTube weekly, I talk about the updates about what we are doing. I show pictures, sometimes videos. You can see me in our bomb shelter, so you can. Yeah, I'm very okay with sharing. I'm already on the list because Russians, they have lists, and it is the fact in Bucha they used the list to kill the activists. So I think I'm already on this list, and I don't feel that I have something to lose here. If they invade Dnipro, probably they would target me anyway, so that's why it's okay.
Well, so that actually goes to a question I have wanted to ask. You seem very focused and upbeat, and I'm wondering if you have struggled with fear or other emotions during this difficult time.
I don't know about fear, actually. It's hard to tell. Actually, on the bombing, I think, yeah. So when I heard really the explosions and everybody is saying exactly this thing, you can be very courageous and you can say, I'm staying here, I'm staying in my native place, and I will fight. But actually, when you literally hear the explosions very close to you with your own ears, and when something is, and I'm not in this Graz reach zone, so I haven't heard this close explosions. I heard the explosions in the city. So when you hear them, it is fear, I would say, but it comes away quite fast. And the anger, probably my first feeling was grief, as I told you. So when it started, it was a grief as if I lost somebody. So I had this same emotion when I lost my father. And so during these funerals and during all these times when I had to deal with it, I had the very same feeling. Like if you have ever lost somebody close, that's the feeling I had the first weeks of the war. And then when the bomb exploded very close, I felt fear. Obviously, that's not something you want to experience at all, you know. And I'm the kind of person who is afraid of fireworks. I've always been. I don't know. So I even don't like fireworks. And yeah, you can be very courageous unless the first bombs fell somewhere next to you. That was the fear, but it came away quite soon. And the anger is probably my dominating feeling now. I'm very angry. I'm very angry after Bucha. I'm very angry after Mariupol. I'm very angry that people who are close to me, they had to suffer it, especially elderly people. My mom is not young. My aunt is even older than my mom, and their old days of their lives, the literal last years of their life. It's not maybe last decade. I hope it will be maybe last decade and something, but their old days where they're supposed to enjoy life, they are already retired, and what they should do, they should enjoy this spring. And this spring is actually stolen from them. And from my personal life, they stole 8 years already, and they're stealing this spring as well. So actually, all my years where people are young and where people should be happy, they stole these years from me. And now my dominating emotion is anger. Now I'm very angry. And at the beginning of the war, I was sorry for these soldiers. They actually lied. They all lied, and we know that now because we interviewed many of them. And each of them knew that they're coming to Ukraine. Maybe like 20 of them didn't know, but they all said we didn't know. Everybody said that they didn't know, but actually now they're starting to talk more and all knew. And I thought, okay, these young boys who came and they didn't know that they come into Ukraine and so many were killed. But no, actually they knew where they're coming. And by now, after these 2 months, they all knew what they're doing. They all knew that they're fighting from the population. They're stealing our washing machines. They're on the first place, they're raping our children. They're raping our women. They're killing civilians. They steal the things from us. They steal the washing. They steal underwear. In Kyiv, they stole underwear, like in this Bucha and Irpin regions. Next to Kyiv, they stole clothing. So that's people who should be punished. I feel anger and I feel desire of revenge. Maybe it's not good. It's a not good position. I'm a woman and I'm into humanitarian thing, and I was more peaceful, as you might imagine. But if I had the chance and if somebody gave me a gun, I would use it. If I had the chance, I would use it against the invaders. Yeah. That the anger is the major feeling now. And I'm sure that after the battle, if I come to the battle, I also would feel fear after this shooting, because they say that it's again a different level of fear. But I think I'm ready to take the chances, and they should take the responsibility for what they did. They are criminals. They are criminals, and they are rapers. They're killers on the first place. And why would we take a serial killer and put him or her in jail if we can let Russians go away with what they're doing in Ukraine? So then we should just open our prisons and say, you're welcome, just feel free to kill everybody you want, to rape everybody you want. They raped children, that's the pedophiles. So then we need to just open the gates of the prisons to all pedophiles and just to say, do whatever. We shouldn't punish them as well. So every Russian who crossed the border of Ukraine should be found, and he or she should take the responsibility. They all should take the accountability. They are all guilty and they should suffer. That's my idea.
I don't know if anybody else has seen this, but I was just really disturbed by a report on BBC, which is a reputable source, about a man who was taken, a civilian and his father and other civilians who were taken prisoner. I believe it was Mariupol. And first of all, you're not supposed to take civilians prisoner. They took them somewhere. They didn't know where. They were blindfolded, taken to what he thinks was a field. They were tortured. They were outdoors. The Russians had him take his boots off. They filled their boots with water and put him back on, and then left them overnight while lying on the field. And he got frostbite. His toes were frozen. Then he ended up in a hospital. They had to amputate his toes. Somebody else, they had to amputate their legs. Then they were sent back to Ukraine in a prisoner exchange. This is Russiaism.
Yeah, this is Russia says it's not something single case, you know. It's not like you can say, oh, every war has such cases, and you can give a lot of examples and other things, but the scale, it's not it's not like we are taking this isolated one case. You can name like not tens now, you can name hundreds of such cases, you know, hundreds. And it's not something that is accidental and it's overused. Yes, soldiers, they're getting crazy at some point. Some of them are getting crazy because people are breaking. And soldiers, even Russian soldiers, they're people. So some of them are breaking, they're getting crazy here. But the scale of it supposes that their commandment is actually saying that it's allowed. So it's their commandment is allowed in it. I'm not saying that our army is perfect, and also you cannot always control if the person is sane or not. So sometimes even people with mental disorders, they come to the military. It's kind of, you cannot filter everybody. But the difference is that the commandment, they should look at these people, they should observe them, and at some point they should punish them. If something like this happens, the commandment of the army, whose soldier is guilty, they should put these people at least in custody, yes. But with Russia's army, the problem is that they are not only put into custody, these cases are not investigated even, but they are military organs, and these people are not even, they are literally given the medals afterwards. They are treated as heroes, so they treat their war criminals. In every war there are war criminals, but they treat their war criminals as heroes. That's the problem with them. That's the problem with Russians. I'm not saying that other soldiers are saint or something, but again, we need to look at what the commandment do, and commandment is not, is corporate. Sometimes commandment were the marauders. They made it like in bigger scale, and commandment are the rapists, and commandment are in church as well. But also they say their fellow soldiers who even sometimes they are thinking, okay, maybe not, but they say, no, you go and kill. You go and rape, and they again they say you can't do it. They let them do it. That's the problem.
Can I ask you more about what you're doing? I think you're also working with children. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we are working with children of refugees. It's not like personally me working with children. It's because in our neighborhood there are volunteers, and volunteers in Ukraine after 2014, it's not a homogeneous movement, because the government wanted to take the control on the volunteers and over volunteers. And if you know Ukraine well, and probably you do because you're interested in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians don't like government. And after government wanted to take volunteers under control, volunteers tried to avoid government with all sorts of so there are the group of governmental volunteers with they have papers of volunteers, which is ridiculous if you think about it. But our group of volunteers is the group of volunteers which is trying to avoid all paperwork and all these organizational things. And it's a group of people who are just, I'm saying it's people who can't sit and can stay home. So this is not only me, maybe there are like 6 or 7 active in only my neighborhood, because next door we have like from the other side of the road there is another group of volunteers. In these different neighborhoods we have this small 5 to 7 people who initiate some kind of activities. And what we do, we find people, refugees who are in the neighborhood, or they find us because the rumor spreads, and they come with children. And when we provide food, we also, there are local teachers who say, okay, if there are children, we will do a workshop for children. And they do this in our neighborhood. It's very well organized, actually. It's even organized better than this neighboring one. And I'm not bragging, it's just the state of effect. We are very well organized here. And the teachers, they twice a week, they have a workshop with children, either painting workshop or doll making workshop or some kind of games. And twice a week, children and their parents actually have this ability to come together, because we don't have schools are not working, kindergartens are not working, so children are not able to socialize, and they're in the age when they need to socialize. So for these refugees children, we twice a week organize these social meetings, and it's not only for children, but their parents come, talk, and when you look at the parents, it's they look devastated and bad. So it's the time twice a week to get a little distraction. And yesterday we had the first workshop for adults actually, but it's not very well attended because they can. It's better to be depressed on sofas and go somewhere as you're adult than go somewhere and you can be distracted. But for your child, of course, you'll go out of your home. So we concentrate on this work with children. And again, it's then you share the problem again. It's problem or not problem. In our volunteer group, all the donations come from our friends. From my all my donations come from my personal friends. And the donations to other people in our volunteer group, they also come from abroad, but from their friends. And we are responsible here in where to put money. And you're thinking, okay, should I buy more underwear or more socks? Should I buy children books at all? Or books is too much when you can buy the clothes in? Or should you buy, what is necessary? You can buy like 2 bags of porridge, or you can buy 1 book for a child. But book is also important, but is it wasting of the money people sending you? Or it's not wasting of the money because you're actually helping these people and children need to develop. So it is also a responsibility of where to put in, but some fraction of the money people send, we put into these workshops in buying these brushes, the paper, all these things for children. So,
and by the way, for people who might want to try to donate, it's very easy to find your videos if you just search for 5 minutes with Ekaterina.
Yeah, on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah, on YouTube, your videos come right up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, in the interest of time, Bill, can you give an update to our listeners who are familiar with Larissa and Akim
Sure.
and Natalie and Victoria?
Okay, I'll give the news briefs here. So so those of you who may have tuned in last time, Natalie has a job. Natalie came to Germany and she went for an interview, and they asked her, so what is your degree? She said, I have a degree in psychology, but I never had a job in psychology. I couldn't find one in Ukraine. I worked as a manicurist. Do you have any work for manicurists? They said, no, you're a psychologist. We desperately need Russian-speaking psychologists, and your job starts next week. So she now has a job. She starts next Monday. She's happy about that. My friend Victoria, who more recently got to Germany, she's the one who had that really dreadful trip from occupied territory.
She was in Kherson.
Yeah, near Kherson. She is, as you remember, it was a very traumatic escape for her and situation. She was living for a month or more under bombs, and she is in a big city in Germany. She's hosted by a couple that sounded really ideal. They're both teachers, and she seemed to fit there. But then she was surprised when the husband presented a rent contract for 100 euros more a month than her stipend gives her. So she went into a panic and was she tried to reach me. She tried to contact the refugee center. She was finally able to resolve it, but it was a very insensitive thing to do. She's just on the verge, and to be upset like that was very, very hard on her. Akim is in Bukovel, back in Ukraine, which is a resort city, but that's where he relocated from Kiev. He is still there with his wife and 6-year-old daughter. He is working on pharmaceutical distribution, which is crucial work, but has no glory. He is worried about his grandmother, who is still in Zaporizhia and hearing rockets overhead. Larissa, you remember Larissa, who was in Ukraine and doing very similar work to what Katerina is describing, working on cooking and making camouflage nets and helping people who were displaced coming to their part of Ukraine. She went back to Kiev with her daughter, and the daughter stayed, and
And
Larissa is
her
now,
daughter is a newly minted medical doctor.
yes, she's a dermatologist, so she's looking for work. Chances are she'll find it. And Larissa is now in the Caribbean. She got her old job back at a medical university, so she went there, and she is experiencing what the rest of us displaced persons and refugees are feeling. Our bodies are safe, but our minds and hearts are back in Ukraine and are traumatized. So don't ask us about the scenery. We don't care. We're not here for the party. I've also seen my friend Ina, who I haven't talked to much. She lives in the Germantown where I am now, and I'm about to leave. But she spends every day helping her son with schoolwork. He's attending online classes and struggles with school normally, but so it's very difficult here. His classes are back in Ukraine, so he's following along with his classes back in Dnipro. She's taking a German class, but the teacher doesn't teach. Excuse me. The teacher does not speak Russian, Ukrainian, or English, so it's a little bit difficult. She does not expect a happy ending like Natalie's. Her degree is as a microbiologist, I think, and she does lab technician work. She doesn't think that she's going to find anything, but we don't know yet. She hasn't had her interview. She's obviously depressed, and she only wants to go back to Dnipro. And she worries about her father and stepmom there in Nikopol, which is in the area we're discussing, but it's even closer to the front lines. It's actually not far from Kyryuri. But they won't leave because they have chickens, and they don't want to leave the chickens. So that's the briefs from my friends who are in Europe or back in Ukraine.
Actually, that's true, because my observation is that being here, staying in Ukraine, and the closer you are to the front line, the better you're feeling actually now. That's, I don't know why, it's something psychological, because I also talk to many people who flee and I don't, that's all the people we know, actually. It's not somebody whom you don't know, and they're crying all the time. Again, it's mostly women with children, and I talked to my friend yesterday, and I was, how are you? And she was like, I was crying for this whole time, and she feel like, and she's crying every day, and she said, I was just laying in bed and I wasn't able to do anything. And here it doesn't look like this. Like, people go outside, and people, again, many people are helping and doing this volunteers job, and when you help other people, it helps you in the first place. So you're involved in the social activities, and you're kind of contributing. But people who flee, even in a very good places, with a very good conditions, who have money even. I have, again, I have a student who is now in a very safe place. I wouldn't imagine that the war will come there, but and she has housing, she has food, she is literally protected. And there was a sound, some kind of sound, and she was like, is it an alert? And it's like, I says, no, but it's like, it's not important, because we are not afraid of alerts unless you hear the sound of bombing on the flying plane. And she was so traumatized, and being in this, she's in America actually now, and being even in America, she's still afraid of alerts, and she's like, is it an alert? And I was like, no, yeah, even if it's alert, it's okay.
I wasn't even there when the bombing started. I'd left just before, and I'm jumpy. I hear an airplane and I get nervous. But I also just want to add that everybody I talked to, including Natalie, who is having a pretty good success story, they all saying, I want to go back to Ukraine.
That's true. That's something I hear. I only heard one person I know many people, and I heard only about one person who wants to stay, because she has a very difficult situation here with her ex-husband and disabled child, and all this very long story. So she wants to stay where she is, and everybody else, they are constantly saying, we want to come back home. We want to come back home. That's it.
Well, Ekaterina, I want to, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. We will be airing this on May 1st. And traditionally here in Takoma Park on May 1st, you would find Bill Brown out at the center of town dancing at 6 a.m. So I wonder, Bill, have you thought at all about Mayday and your typical Mayday activities?
Oh,
Did you know this, Katerina?
quickly.
Nope, Bill has never mentioned.
He always dances on
Imagine,
Mayday.
imagine that I never mentioned this. Yeah, yes, yes, it's a folk dancing. Well, you know, I've been interested in folk music and dance. But yeah, I'm sorry, I just, you know, it's not in my mind. I'm not here to party. You know, I just don't feel it.
Mhm.
Maybe there are some recordings from the last years. I want to see it.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
there's a
Even
lot
of
this
them, yeah.
personally for Ukrainian refugees or for Ukrainians who actually on this next to the frontline zone. I would be
Yeah,
happy to
play for them. Yeah, yeah.
You will love it.
Yeah, well, it's, you know,
forward to it.
compared to Ukrainian folk dancing, it's pretty unimpressive.
We
You
need
should
the
see the
proof.
whole, you should
We
see
need
the whole
proof.
pack. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, I'll send you videos. Don't worry.
Okay.
The I'm sorry, now I lost my train. Oh, well, since I asked about that, are there traditional Mayday? Oh, sorry. Are there traditional Mayday activities in Ukraine?
Used to be the demonstrations, but we see it as the rudiment of the Soviet times. Maybe that's not the truth, but it's not the case. But because they forced people on the May Day to go to the demonstrations for so many years, and we had on the 26th of April, we had the date of commemorating Chernobyl catastrophe, and after Chernobyl, the 1st of May was the demonstration day in Kyiv, and they forced people to go despite the immediate danger to the population. They hide it in order to demonstration to be held in all these big cities. And we are kind of traumatized because of this. Maybe not me personally, because I don't remember it. I was born right before the Soviet Union collapsed, so I remember nothing about the Soviet Union. But the population in general and these historic memories which parents pass to children, we remember that it's something ridiculous. So we don't do it anymore. So the May Day is usually, but it's a very nice season because there's a May Day with a holiday. We have a weekend, and if the 1st of May comes to Saturday or Sunday, we have Monday as a day off, and then we have a day off on the 8th of May, and we used to have it on the 9th of May as a Victory Day, but now we don't celebrate Victory Day anymore. We have the commemorating day on the 8th of May, so we have 2 days off very close to each other, and you also can take 2 days off or 4 days off from your vacations. And usually the main celebration, it starts on the 1st of May and it's ended on the 10th of May. So usually this is the big weekends and everybody coming to the picnics, everybody coming to dachas, to the seaside. And now the government warns people not to go anywhere outside of their locations because it's dangerous, especially in the places near the war zone and Dnipro including actually, because the forests are closed, even forests are closed because it can be mined, and we had forest fires and all these things. So now it's dangerous to go out for any kind of camping, which was also popular because May is a very warm month here. People even swim in the river usually. But this year we wouldn't have this fun. So we are not celebrating the May Day as it is, but we are celebrating the May days, like all these long holidays usually.
And it sounds like Mayday is associated with the Soviet Union, so that takes away some of the interest and pleasure.
But
everybody's camping.
Yeah.
The last year's entry, Ukraine's entry in Eurovision, was a song called Shum, which means noise, and it's a spring song. And it's an old tradition that it looks, I've seen pictures of them dancing to this, and it looks a little bit like maypole dancing, a little bit, only without the maypole. And the group was Goa, and they did a super job of making this taking this old folk song and making it contemporary. It's really cool. So they do have the same kind of
But it's
springtime.
not a May tradition, it's March tradition more. We celebrated because our New Year, yes, years ago, it was the 1st of March, and that was the March tradition. Yeah, it's a little bit like 1 month shift.
Yeah, so they do have like the rustic springtime traditions, like which is what English May Day is based from also.
Mhm. Well, Katerina, I'm very grateful to Bill for connecting me to you. I'm grateful to you for spending so much time speaking with me. One purpose is that I want the people in Bill's hometown, his other hometown, to have a human voice to the war and the violence. And so I appreciate that you're helping to provide that. And I'm wondering if there are any, other comments that you would make to Bill's hometown neighbors over the radio.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And secondly, in the hometown of Bill, I would say thank you guys for having Bill there, for delivering Bill, for letting him go here, because it's one of the big treasure of Ukraine now. So after the victory, I'm sure Bill will come to us. So now we are having such a good new Ukrainian citizen. And also thank you for helping, because I know that people are also donating, and each donation, there is not such a thing as a small donation, and each donation helps to stand, and Ukraine was supposed to fall within 4 days, and that what was the expectations from everybody, and now it's more than 2 months already, so that helps us to stand, and each donation is bringing our victory closer, and it's about the time. We are very sure that we will win, but now it's a question of time, and each help which comes here, it's just making this victory day closer to us. Maybe it wouldn't be the 9th or the 8th of May as we all hope for, but it will come, and the more help we have, the sooner this day will happen. So
all right, thank you. And I have other questions, but I think I'm also thinking about my airtime. I only have 2 hours. and we have local elections going on. Are you on Telegram?
Yes, I have Telegram. Yeah.
Would you mind sending me your digits? You can just put them in the chat.
Okay, I'll try, because I don't remember it from my memory.
Oh, okay.
It's random. It's a new messenger for me, because I started to have it right before the war, and I didn't have how to find it. This is me, and my nickname is perfect there. Okay, I think I can just put my phone number here, isn't it?
I'm sure I could, yeah. And Bill, we didn't get much of an update from you today.
Oh, okay. Just briefly, I'm getting ready to make my next move. I'm leaving the city of Bremen, which is where I am now, and headed to event. Well, I'm going to briefly stop in and see Natalia and her host family, and then I'm going to go to Salzburg, where I have friends who took my packages that I sent from Ukraine. I threw together a bunch of stuff and sent it out when I realized I had too much to carry. So they now have this stuff that's too much to carry. So I'm going to go pick it up, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. I have been trying to find some way to extend my visa, but I'm running out of time, and I think I'm going to end up having to go back to the US in about 3 weeks.
Okay.
So there's a couple other things I might try, but I think that looks like my fate. But then I can go back to Europe in 3 months after that.
And you think that if you do come to the States, you will head back to Europe and eventually back to your apartment in Kyiv?
I hope so. I'm not sure if I'm going to try to hold on to that apartment. I'm still paying rent, but I'm going to need to be paying rent elsewhere too. So we'll see.
I heard something about Dnipro too.
Yeah,
coming to Dnipro, I mean.
Go to Dnipro.
There you go. There you go.
Right.
And wait, last week on the radio, I played a piece of the video that you shot, or the sound you shot, of
Oh, good.
the group named Unskilled. They seemed pretty skilled to me.
Yeah.
At the fundraiser in Germany, Zombie by the Cranberries.
Uh-huh.
So that event was successful, it looks like.
Fairly successful. They didn't have many people as they were hoping, but it was good. And actually, some friends of mine sent donations, and I forwarded it to them, and so that helped.
And Natalie spoke.
And Natalie spoke. She got up and she spoke in German. She had to read it, but she did very well. And everybody was really. She thanked her host family, and I got to say that her host family is really good. They're really doing it right. They've got the mom and dad are where she's living are very supportive, and their son and his wife are living close by, and they're involved too. So it's like a team, you know, and it's super. It's super. I wish I could figure a way to go and live in that town and be part of Team Natalia and help her out. But looks like I can't do that.
No. Well, Ekaterina, it's something I had not expected, but I'm making so many Ukrainian friends that
You should visit. You should
I
visit Dnipro,
expect.
not Kyiv. You should visit Dnipro. I'm telling you.
Yeah, so I expect a visit to Ukraine at some point in my future to meet you in person.
Mhm.
You would love it. Ukraine is beautiful. Before the invasion, Ukraine is beautiful, and we are going to rebuild everything after it. So you should visit definitely.
All right. Well,
The city that I'm in, Bremen, came under like some of the heaviest bombing in World War II, and 75% of the city was just erased. Now it looks beautiful. They've rebuilt it. It's you know, they still have a beautiful old town part, and it's beautiful. It's hard to believe that was the case. So I would, you know, there's hope for all the cities in Ukraine too.
It just needs to get rid of Russians.
Just get rid of the Russians.
well, I'll be thinking of you this week, and I'll start following along on your YouTube channel,
Thank you.
and I'll keep reading your reports on Substack, Bill.
Okay, yes, Substack, nativespeaker.com. That's native speaker with a C instead of an S, and that's where I keep an account. I haven't been keeping it up too much lately because I was busy with that fundraiser, and now I'm busy with moving. But I'll try to post some stuff. It'll probably just be segments from your show, which is very handy to have that those audio clips.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill,
Thank you, Eric,
for setting this up, and let's keep in touch, Ekaterina. You know, really the best wishes to you.
Thank you.
and thank you, Eric, for doing all this. It's you know, humanitarian of you.
And I will be posting
Thank you
this,
for
so
your help,
you
yeah.
can.
And for warm words too.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Peaceful.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
До побачення.
До побачення.